not entirely her own, surged in her mind. Faces, events, moments she had never lived, yet somehow knew. She understood now. The village, the heart, the crooked figure. It was all tied to the past she didn't fully remember. The staircase opened into a cavernous chamber beneath the village. The walls were covered in carvings, alive with faint light, twisting and moving like the heartbeat of the earth itself. At the center, a massive stone obelisk pulsed with a dark energy, and hovering above it was the lantern bearer, watching, waiting. Its hollow gaze locked onto Elena. "This is it," she whispered, voice shaking. "This is the heart of the village." And somewhere deep within the chamber, she felt the promise of a truth long buried, a secret that could either save them or consume them all. Confronting the heart. The chamber beneath the village was vast, far larger than any building above could contain. Shadows danced along the walls like living things, twisting and folding as if trying to escape the light. The carvings pulsed rhythmically, matching the heartbeat that seemed to echo through the floor, walls, and ceiling. Each pulse sent a shiver through Elena and the others, pressing against their very bones. At the center, the stone obelisk loomed like a dark sentinel. Its surface was etched with spirals and jagged lines, glowing faintly with an energy that felt alive, aware. Hovering above it, the lantern-bearer's faint light flickered in unison with the carvings. Its presence was oppressive, almost suffocating, yet Elena felt drawn to it. She could sense that the answers they sought were somewhere within this dark, pulsing core. Armin tightened his grip on his knife. "We can't just stand here," he said, his voice low but firm. "Whatever's in that obelisk, it's not going to wait for us to figure it out." Daniel knelt near the edge of the glowing carvings, tracing them with his fingers once more. His voice was trembling, but steady enough to utter the faint incantations that had driven the crooked figure away in the barn. The key has to unlock it fully," he whispered. "Elena, you have it, right?" Elena's hands shook as she pulled the silver key from her pocket. Its metal was cold against her palm, the weight of centuries pressing down on her as if the house itself was aware she held it. She stepped closer to the obelisk, feeling the pulse of dark energy that seemed to radiate outward from its core. As she approached, the shadows recoiled slightly, but the chamber trembled violently. Dust and debris fell from the ceiling, and distant, anguished whispers echoed from the walls. The crooked figure emerged from the edges of the darkness, slower now, but more deliberate, its hollow eyes locked onto Elena. "This is it," she whispered to the group. "This is the moment. We either end this, or it ends us." Armin stepped in front of the others. "Then we do it together," he said. Elena inserted the silver key into a narrow indentation in the obelisk surface. The moment it clicked, the carvings flared with blinding light, and the pulse of the chamber intensified. The shadows writhed violently, screaming in a chorus of distorted voices. The crooked figure lunged, its limbs stretching impossibly as it tried to block their path, but the energy from the obelisk pushed against it, holding it at bay. Daniel chanted faster, tracing additional symbols into the dust-covered floor, each one glowing with a fierce light. Elena felt a tug in her mind, memories surfacing, faces she didn't recognize, events she hadn't lived, all tied to this place. She realized with a jolt that the obelisk contained the memories of everyone who had ever lived or died in the village, and the crooked figure was the guardian of those memories. The lantern-bearer's glow intensified, and its hollow gaze seemed to pierce Elena's soul. "You are the key," it whispered inside her mind. "You always were. Finish it." Summoning every ounce of courage, Elena turned the key fully. The obelisk cracked, sending shards of glowing stone spinning outward. The shadows screamed, twisting violently, but slowly began to dissolve, sucked into the obelisk's core as the carvings on the wall stabilized. The crooked figure shrieked, thrashing one final time, and then vanished entirely, leaving only a faint echo in the chamber. The pulse of the obelisk slowed, The whispers quieted, and a heavy silence settled over the group. Elena sank to her knees, breathing heavily, feeling the weight of the centuries lift slightly from her shoulders. Armin and Daniar came to her side, eyes wide with awe and exhaustion. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, the chamber felt still, safe. But Elena knew better than to believe the nightmare was completely over. The village had remembered them, yes, but the house, the heart, and the memories it held would always be part of them now. And somewhere, deep in the shadows beyond the chamber, a faint pulse remained, like a heartbeat echoing in the distance. A reminder that some secrets are never truly gone. Shadows of the village. The chamber's fragile calm did little to soothe Elena's nerves. Even with the obelisk secured, a heavy weight lingered in the air, pressing down like invisible hands. The group gathered their courage, lanterns swaying in Elena's trembling hands as they prepared to leave the subterranean chamber. Stepping back onto the staircase, the shadows seemed to stretch and twist, reaching for them like black fingers. Each step upward was measured, cautious, the echoes of their own footsteps amplified by the oppressive silence. The whispers that had plagued them all night were now faint, like the murmurs of memories trying to escape the stone walls. Outside the barn, the village seemed unchanged, yet entirely alien. The overgrown paths wound differently than they had before, trees bending in unnatural angles, branches scraping the ground. Windows stared back at them, dark and empty, like watchful eyes. It was as though the village itself was testing them, seeing if they had earned the right to leave. "Keep moving," Elena whispered. "We're not safe yet. Whatever remains, it's still out there." They walked cautiously toward the main road, but shadows flickered at the edges of their vision. Each time they turned, nothing was there, but the feeling of being followed was undeniable. Every shuttered window, every broken door seemed to pulse with awareness, alive with silent observation. Daniar's voice broke the silence. "It's like the village knows we're here, even now after the obelisk." "Yes," Elena said, nodding slowly. "It remembers. It doesn't forgive. But we survived. That's the first step. We need to find the heart completely, see all that it holds, or we'll never truly leave." Armin's grip on his knife tightened. "And what if it's lying? What if the village wants to trap us forever?" Elena's eyes scanned the narrow streets ahead, lit only by their faltering lantern. The air was thick, almost tangible, as if the night itself had become a living thing. "Then we face it together, no matter what." Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught Elena's eye. A child's silhouette appeared at the end of the street, motionless, staring. But the figure's face was twisted, too old for a child, yet not fully adult. Its eyes were hollow, glowing faintly in the lantern light. The group froze. "Who's there?" Elena called, her voice wavering slightly. The figure tilted its head, almost mocking, then vanished into the darkness between the buildings. The whispering returned, soft and urgent. "Do not stray, do not forget." The words weren't audible, yet Elena understood them clearly in her mind. Memories of the villagers who had vanished, faces she didn't know but somehow recognized, flickered behind her eyes. The village itself seemed alive, its history bleeding into the present, reminding them that survival was only the first layer of the ordeal. "We need to move faster," Armin said. "Whatever that was, it's testing us." Elena led the group through narrow alleys, past crumbling houses and overgrown gardens. The shadows stretched longer, almost tangible, and the wind carried distant cries, half human, half something else entirely. The villagers huddled close, every nerve on edge, knowing that one wrong step could awaken what still lingered in the corners of this cursed place. And then, just ahead, they glimpsed a faint glow emanating from what appeared to be the town square. Unlike the obelisk, this light was warm, almost inviting, but beneath it, Elena sensed a tension, an unreadable promise of both revelation and danger. "This is it," Elena whispered. "Whatever remains of the heart, it's here." The group exchanged glances, fear and determination mingling in their eyes. Each step toward the glow felt like stepping deeper into the memory of the village itself, into the very soul of its shadows. And as they reached the edge of the square, Elena realized that the final confrontation, the one that would reveal all secrets, all sins, all memories, was about to begin. The village held its breath. The square of shadows. The town square stretched before them like an open wound in the night. Its cobblestones were cracked and slick with dew, reflecting the pale light of a moon barely visible behind thick, oppressive clouds. Every building around the square leaned at impossible angles, their rooftops jagged like teeth. Yet, from the center, a soft, warm glow radiated, pulsing as though the village itself were alive and breathing. Elena tightened her grip on a lantern, its light trembling in her hand. The others gathered close, their faces pale, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and anticipation. Every instinct screamed that they had stepped into the very heart of the village, into a place where memory, malice, and time converged. From the glow emerged the first shadow, a figure tall and thin, draped in tattered clothing, its face obscured by a flickering hood of darkness. Its presence pressed on them like the weight of the night itself, and the whispers began again, a low, urgent hum that seemed to vibrate in their bones. Armin drew his knife, stepping protectively in front of the group. "Stay close," he whispered. "Don't let it separate us." The shadow moved slowly, deliberately, circling the square like a predator studying its prey. Its movements were unnatural, limbs bending and twisting with a fluidity that defied reality. Yet Elena noticed something else. Small faces flickering within the darkness, faces of children and adults, all hollow-eyed, mouths open in silent screams. The shadows of the villagers lost to time and memory were trapped within it, feeding its presence, sustaining its form. Daniyar knelt, tracing the air with his hands, whispering incantations learned from the carvings. The glow of the square brightened slightly, casting long, distorted reflections of their forms across the cobblestones. Elena felt a cold shiver run down her spine. The shadows reacted to Daniyar's chanting, jerking and twisting, but they did not flee. They were testing them, probing the group's courage, their resolve. "Remember what we learned?" Elena urged, her voice firm. "The carvings, the obelisk, they respond to intent, not fear. Focus." The shadows surged forward, faster now, more defined, their hollow faces pressing against the edges of the group. One reached for Armin, long fingers stretching impossibly, brushing against his sleeve. He swung his knife, but it passed through the figure as though it were made of smoke. Panic threatened to take hold, but Elena grabbed his arm, grounding him. "Control it with your mind," she whispered urgently. "Don't react with fear. React with purpose. Remember the key, the obelisk, the carvings. This is all connected." Daniyar's voice rose, chanting in unison with Elena's thoughts, forming patterns of energy in the space around them. The shadows twisted violently, a chorus of agony and confusion, resisting the force of the light and emanating from the group. Suddenly, a massive figure emerged from the glow at the center of the square. The crooked figure they had seen before, more terrifying now, surrounded by the writhing shadows of those it had claimed. Its hollow eyes locked onto Elena. The whispers converged into a single voice, loud and commanding. "You cannot undo what has been sealed, but you may choose to face it." Elena swallowed hard. The key in her pocket felt heavier than ever, and she realized that this confrontation was more than survival. It was a test. The village, the shadows, the heart itself. They were all waiting for her to act, to decide whether to free the memories trapped within or leave the darkness to consume them all. With a deep breath, Elena stepped forward, lantern held high, determination hardening in her chest. "We face it," she said, voice steady. "Together." And as the crooked figure advanced, its shadows writhing around it, the first true battle for the village's soul began, echoing through the square like a storm about to break. The first strike. The air in the square vibrated with tension, as though the village itself were holding its breath. The crooked figure loomed larger than any human should, its elongated limbs twisting in impossible angles. The shadows swirling around it seemed alive, reaching for Elena and the others, hungry for fear, for hesitation. Elena tightened her grip on the lantern. The light flickered, but she forced it steady, letting its glow radiate outward, pushing back the edges of the darkness. "Stay close. Don't let it separate us," she shouted. Her voice, firm and commanding, seemed to anchor the others, giving them courage. Daniyar chanted rapidly, tracing symbols in the air, drawing energy from memory and fear alike. The carvings on the cobblestones glowed faintly beneath their feet, resonating with his words. Each pulse of light pushed against the shadows, forcing them to recoil slightly, though the crooked figure pressed forward, relentless. Armin swung his knife again, this time not to strike, but to create a path, cutting through the writhing shadows like a lighthouse beam cutting through fog. His movements were precise, measured, synchronized with Daniyar's chanting and Elena's steady illumination. Together, they formed a triangle of resistance in the heart of the square. The crooked figure hissed, a wet, rasping sound that echoed across the buildings and lunged with unnatural speed. Its hollow eyes locked on Elena, its shadowy hands reaching for her. She raised the lantern high, and suddenly, the silver key around her neck resonated, glowing with a piercing light. The glow expanded, radiating outward, connecting with the carvings on the cobblestones and the air itself. The shadows screamed, a sound like 1,000 voices merging into one. They thrashed violently, writhing and twisting, but could not advance past the protective triangle the group had formed. Elena felt the energy of the village beneath her feet, feeding the light of the key, amplifying her will. With a deep breath, Elena focused every thought on the obelisk, the carvings, and the promise she had made. She spoke aloud, her voice strong, clear. "We will not be consumed. We will not be forgotten." The silver key blazed, and a shockwave rippled through the square. Shadows exploded outward, flung against walls, scattering like smoke in a storm. The crooked figure shrieked, staggering backward, its elongated limbs recoiling. The faces trapped within its form flickered, some screaming, some weeping, but all shifting, almost human for a brief, terrifying moment. Daniyar's chanting intensified, harmonizing with Elena's declaration. Armin's knife remained raised, a symbol of defiance rather than violence. Together, they held the ground, the glow of the key carving a safe space amid the chaos. And then, as suddenly as it began, the wave of energy subsided. The shadows collapsed into themselves, leaving the square eerily still. The crooked figure had vanished, leaving only a faint echo in the air, a memory of its presence lingering like smoke. Elena sank to her knees, breathing heavily. Armin and Daniyar moved to her side, exhaustion written across their faces, yet a flicker of awe remained in their eyes. The square was quiet now, the oppressive weight of the night lifted slightly, but the sense of vigilance remained. Elena looked around. The glow from the key dimmed, returning to its faint shimmer. "This is only the beginning," she said softly, more to herself than anyone else. "The village has been tested, but we've survived the first strike. There's more ahead." And somewhere in the darkness, beyond the edges of the square, she could feel it, the village's heart still pulsing, still alive, still waiting. The second phase, the calm that followed the first strike, was deceptive. The village seemed to exhale, but Elena knew better. Beneath the cobblestones, beneath the broken windows and leaning houses, something stirred. Something ancient. Something patient. "We can't linger here," Elena whispered, voice taut with urgency. "The first wave is gone, but it's not finished. The village, it's learning, adapting." Armin's grip on his knife tightened. "Then what do we do? We can't keep fighting forever." Daniyar shook his head, exhaustion etching deep lines on his young face. "No," he said quietly. "It's not about fighting. It's about understanding. about moving where it doesn't expect. If we rush blindly, it will consume us. Elena nodded, though a shiver ran down her spine. The shadows had not returned yet, but the memory of their faces, hollow, screaming, haunted her. She led the group through the winding alleys of the village, their lantern casting long, distorted silhouettes against walls that seemed to pulse subtly, as if the buildings themselves were alive. A distant sound made them freeze, a faint, rhythmic tapping, like a heartbeat carried on the wind. It came from the abandoned church at the far edge of the square. The group exchanged uneasy glances. No one spoke. Elena knew, instinctively, that this sound was a lure, a test. As they approached the church, the shadows shifted. Not in front of them, but above, crawling along the rooftops and eaves. They hung there like tar, dripping and writhing, waiting for a signal. The crooked figure's presence was not needed. Its absence was the real threat. The village itself was responding, testing their courage, predicting their moves. Inside the church, the air was heavy with dust and decay, but the carvings, faded, ancient, covered the walls, glowing faintly in reaction to the lantern. Daniel knelt, tracing symbols in the dust. "It's a puzzle," he murmured, "not just the obelisk. The whole village is a lock, and we have to solve it step by step." Elena's gaze moved over the faded frescoes. Shadows within the paint seemed to stretch toward them, faces forming and dissolving in the dim light. The whispers returned, more insistent now, overlapping in a chaotic harmony. "Do not leave. Do not forget. Remember, remember." Suddenly, the floor beneath them trembled. Dust rained from the ceiling. A deep groan echoed through the building, as if the church itself were awakening. Shadows shot from the corners, swirling like smoke, but carrying the shape of human limbs and faces. The group braced themselves, forming a tight circle around the lantern. Elena raised the silver key high, feeling its resonance with the carvings on the walls. A pulse of light surged outward, colliding with the shadows. They screamed a horrid, inhuman sound and recoiled, but not completely. Some lingered, reaching with twisted fingers, trying to touch, to pull, to consume. "Focus on the pattern," Elena shouted. "The carvings, the symbols. Think, don't panic." Daniar's chanting grew louder, faster, his hands tracing complex shapes in the dust. The lantern flared, casting brilliant light across the chamber. Slowly, systematically, the shadows began to dissolve, retreating into cracks in the walls, into the floor, back to wherever they had emerged from. Elena exhaled, though her chest ached. "We survived this phase," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "But the village, it's alive, and it's testing us at every step." Armin sheathed his knife, glancing around warily. "Then we keep moving. We find the next part of its heart before it learns something new about us." Elena nodded. The silver key pulsed faintly against her chest, a reminder of the power and responsibility now resting in her hands. The second phase of the confrontation was over, but the night was far from finished. Outside, the village lay silent, but every shadow, every twisted corner, every whispering memory waited, patient, eternal, and hungry. The echoes awakened. The night had grown heavier, almost suffocating, as Elena and her group stepped cautiously through the village streets. The glow of the silver key was faint now, yet its pulse resonated in tune with something far deeper, something beneath the village itself. Every cobblestone seemed to hum beneath their feet, every shadow stretching unnaturally, as though the town were breathing. "This is it," Elena whispered, voice taut. "The heart isn't just the obelisk or the carvings. It's everything, the memories, the shadows, the souls trapped in this place. And it's awake now. It knows we're close." Daniar's hands trembled, though his focus remained sharp. "The carvings were warnings," he said quietly. "They didn't want anyone to reach this far. We've triggered something ancient." Armin scanned the streets, knife in hand. "Then we need to move fast. We can't let it gather strength while we hesitate." As they entered a narrow alley, the shadows thickened, coiling like smoke around the corners, forming shapes that resembled long-lost villagers. Faces flickered, some familiar, some grotesquely twisted. Their hollow eyes followed Elena and the group, silently screaming, silently pleading. The air became electric with tension, every heartbeat echoing in unison with the pulsing of the silver key. Elena stopped suddenly. Ahead, a door carved from blackened oak emitted a faint light. Ancient symbols glowed faintly on its surface, spiraling in patterns that mirrored those they had seen in the obelisk and barn. This is where it all converges, she said, her voice barely audible. The final chamber, the heart of the village itself. The group exchanged wary glances. Armin swallowed, trying to mask the fear curling in his stomach. Then let's end this, he said. Once we open that door, there's no turning back. Elena nodded and approached, inserting the silver key into the lock. The moment it clicked, the ground beneath them vibrated violently. Shadows erupted from every corner, writhing and stretching, whispering in overlapping voices. Do not enter, do not touch, do not remember. The door slowly swung open, revealing a vast chamber, larger than any building above could contain. The walls were lined with carvings, glowing faintly as if reacting to their presence. In the center floated a massive sphere of pulsating darkness, veins of shadow stretching outward, connecting to the walls, the floor, and the ceiling. The crooked figure hovered near it, watching, patient, more terrifying than ever. Elena stepped forward, lantern raised. This is the heart, she whispered. Her voice echoed, swallowed by the immense space. Everything we've faced, everything we've feared, it's all here. Daniar knelt quickly, tracing symbols into the dust with his fingers. We can control it if we act together, he said urgently. If we synchronize with the carvings, the obelisk, the key, we can push it back. But one mistake, his voice faltered, the shadows curling closer. Armin moved protectively in front of them, knife raised. Then we don't make mistakes, he said, determination hardening in his voice. The crooked figure hissed, a deep, resonant sound that vibrated through the chamber. The sphere pulsed, sending waves of darkness toward the group. Elena felt a chill press against her chest, as if the air itself were trying to squeeze her breath away. Now, she shouted, raising the key high. Daniar's chanting rose in intensity, each syllable resonating with the carvings, with the obelisk, with the very heartbeat of the village. The shadows screamed, writhing violently, but the sphere began to tremble, pulses of light piercing the darkness as the silver key responded to Elena's will. The crooked figure lunged, but the group held firm. Light flared, shadows shrieked, and for a brief, terrifying moment, the village itself seemed to shudder, caught between collapse and revelation. Elena's heart pounded. She realized, with perfect clarity, that this was the beginning of the true confrontation. The heart of the village was awake, and now it would reveal everything. The heart unleashed. The chamber trembled, the air thick with power and menace. Shadows twisted violently around the floating sphere at the center, writhing like serpents with human faces trapped within their forms. The crooked figure hovered, observing Elena and the group, its hollow eyes reflecting a cruel, timeless intelligence. Elena's grip on the silver key tightened. Every pulse of the sphere sent shivers through her body, but she forced herself to remain steady. Daniar now, synchronized with the carvings. Armin, stay ready. Daniar's hands moved quickly, tracing glowing symbols on the floor. The carvings flared in response, radiating energy that clashed with the shadows. The group felt the force reverberate through their bodies, as if the village itself were alive, testing their resolve. The crooked figure hissed, its form elongating and twisting, merging with the shadows that spiraled around the sphere. Suddenly, tendrils of darkness shot toward the group, curling like coils of smoke, each one carrying whispers of the villagers who had been trapped for decades. Elena stepped forward, raising the key high. A surge of light erupted from it, cutting through the darkness. The tendrils recoiled, shrieking in a chorus of anguished voices. The sphere pulsed violently, sending a wave of energy outward, shaking the chamber. "This is it," Elena shouted, her voice echoing against the walls. "We control it. Together." Armin moved in unison with her, slashing through the remaining tendrils of shadow with precise, deliberate movements. Daniar chanted faster, the carvings glowing brighter, forming a protective pattern around the group. Slowly, the sphere began to crack, fissures of pure light splitting its surface. The crooked figure shrieked, a sound that seemed to bend the air itself. Its shadowy form stretched, trying to merge with the collapsing sphere, but the energy from the key and the carvings held firm. Elena felt the power coursing through her veins, her will synchronized with the pulse of the village, pushing back the darkness that had haunted generations. Suddenly, a deafening roar echoed from within the sphere. Faces of villagers, both familiar and unknown, flickered across its surface, some weeping, some screaming, some silently pleading. Elena understood they were not enemies. They were memories, echoes, remnants trapped by the village's heart, waiting for release. "Let them go," she whispered, almost to herself. "They're not yours to hold anymore." With a final surge of energy, the key blazed brilliantly. The sphere shattered in a burst of light, shadows dissolving instantly, screaming fading into silence. The crooked figure disintegrated, leaving behind only a faint, lingering echo, a whisper of the village's old malice. The chamber fell silent. The oppressive weight lifted, leaving only a calm, almost serene stillness. Elena sank to her knees, breathing heavily, her body trembling from exertion. Armin and Daniar came to her side, eyes wide with awe and exhaustion. Outside the chamber, the village itself seemed transformed. The crooked angles of the buildings were softened, the oppressive shadows diminished. The air felt lighter, almost clean. Though the heart of the village had unleashed its power, it had also yielded something: freedom, release, and perhaps a chance for healing. Elena looked at the silver key, now dim but still warm against her chest. She realized that the journey was far from over. There were still secrets to uncover, memories to honor, and shadows that might yet linger. But the first true victory had been won. And somewhere, deep within the village, faint whispers of gratitude floated on the night air, carrying with them the hope that even the darkest hearts could eventually find peace. Whispers of redemption. The village lay in an uneasy calm, the first soft breaths of dawn brushing against the crooked rooftops and cobblestone streets. Elena, Armin, and Daniar stepped out of the chamber, lanterns still glowing faintly, casting long, wavering shadows behind them. The air felt different now, lighter, yet filled with remnants of the night's horrors, as if the village itself was holding its breath, testing the new balance. Elena glanced at the square, where the shattered sphere had once pulsed with darkness. Faint wisps of light lingered, delicate and almost alive, floating upward like liberated souls. "It's not over," she whispered, more to herself than to the others. "The heart is free, but the village, it remembers everything. Every shadow, every fear, every loss. We need to honor that." Daniar nodded slowly. "The villagers trapped here, they aren't just memories. They're pieces of the village's soul. If we ignore them, the darkness could return." Armin's eyes scanned the streets. "Then we make sure it doesn't. We finish what we started, whatever it takes." A faint movement caught Elena's attention. At the edge of the square, near a collapsed building, a small figure emerged from the shadows. A child, no older than 10, eyes wide and fearful. Yet, unlike the other apparitions they had seen, this one looked real, tangible. It stepped closer cautiously, glancing at the group, then at the faint light still radiating from the silver key. Elena knelt, lowering the lantern so the child could see her face. "It's okay," she said softly. "You're safe now." The child's lips trembled. "But they won't stop," he whispered. "The darkness, it's still here. It's in the walls, in the streets, in everything. Elena's heart tightened. She understood. Though the heart had been unleashed, some remnants of its power lingered. Fragments of memory, grief, and malice that could easily grow in a shadow if left unattended. "We can help," she said, "but you have to trust us." The child nodded, stepping forward, his small hand trembling as he reached for the lantern. Elena placed her hand over his, letting the faint warmth of the key's energy flow through. The glow intensified slightly, and the shadows along the edges of the square recoiled, vanishing into the cracks and crevices of the village. Daniar and Armin joined her, forming a protective circle around the child. Elena realized that this act of compassion, this willingness to connect, was as important as any battle. The village's heart, its memories and shadows, had responded not just to force, but to understanding, empathy, and courage. Suddenly, a whisper rose from the ruins, a soft, collective murmur, voices layered but harmonious. "Thank you for remembering us, for freeing us." The light from the key pulsed in response, spreading gently throughout the village. The crooked angles of the buildings seemed less menacing, the oppressive shadows softened, and the air felt breathable, warm, alive. Elena exhaled, a weary but genuine smile breaking across her face. "It's done," she said. "For now, the village is at peace. The heart has been freed, and the shadows, they're gone." Armin glanced at her, a mix of relief and lingering tension in his eyes. "For now," he echoed. "We need to make sure it stays that way." The child, clutching the lantern tightly, looked up at Elena. "Will it come back?" he asked quietly. Elena knelt, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Not if we remember. Not if we stay vigilant. The village has its heart again, and we've learned its secrets. Shadows can't survive in the light of understanding." As the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, illuminating the village in soft gold, Elena, Armin, and Daniar led the child through the streets. Each step forward was a step of healing, a reclamation of what had been lost, and a promise to honor the village's memories without fear. The whispers faded, replaced by the gentle hum of life returning to a place that had been trapped in darkness for far too long. And in that fleeting, fragile peace, Elena realized that their journey was not just about survival. It was about redemption, courage, and the power of confronting the heart of darkness with light. The dawn of the heart. The first full light of dawn spilled over the village, bathing the crooked rooftops and cobblestone streets in a soft, golden glow. The oppressive weight that had hung over the village for centuries was gone, or so it seemed. Elena, Armin, and Daniar stood in the square, exhausted but resolute. The child they had guided safely through the night clutched the lantern, its faint light now steady, almost comforting. Elena looked around, her eyes taking in the village in its fragile rebirth. Broken windows reflected sunlight, crooked doors stood upright, and the air carried the scent of damp earth and hope. The silver key hung around her neck, pulsing faintly as if still alive, a reminder of the power she had wielded and the responsibility she now bore. "This is it," Elena whispered. "The heart is free. The shadows, they can no longer hold the village captive." Armin exhaled, the tension leaving his body in a long, slow breath. "We did it," he said simply. "All the fear, all the darkness, it's over." Daniar shook his head, smiling faintly. "Oh yes, but the village will always remember, and so will we. This place, these memories, they've changed us. Forever." Elena nodded, feeling the truth of his words. The village's heart had been more than a source of darkness. It had been a mirror of human fear, memory, and grief. By facing it, they had not only freed the villagers trapped in shadows, but also confronted their own inner fears, their own doubts, and their courage had been tested to its limits. A soft breeze stirred through the square, carrying the faintest echoes of whispers, gentle, peaceful, almost like... The child looked up at Elena, eyes wide with wonder. "Will the shadows ever come back?" he asked, voice trembling slightly. Elena knelt, placing a steady hand on his shoulder. Not if we remember, she said softly. Not if we honor the heart of the village and the memories it holds. Shadows can only survive where there is fear and neglect. But courage, understanding, and love, they keep the darkness at bay. As the group began to walk through the village, Elena felt a profound sense of closure. Each building, each cobblestone seemed lighter, more alive. Memories of the past, no longer trapped in shadows, were now free, mingling with the present. The village was no longer a place of terror. It was a place of remembrance, of healing, of life. They reached the edge of the village, where the forest began, its dark canopy now softened by the morning light. Elena paused, looking back at the village one last time. We've done what no one else could, she said. We faced the heart. We survived, and we left it whole. That's the true victory. Armin and Daniar stood beside her, their faces marked by exhaustion, yet shining with pride and relief. The child ran ahead, laughter mingling with the morning breeze, a sound that seemed to echo through the village like a blessing. Elena felt the warmth of the sunlight on her face and knew that the journey had changed them all. The darkness had been fierce, relentless, and terrifying, but had also revealed the strength within them, their courage, their unity, and their ability to face the unknown. As they left the village behind, Elena looked at the silver key one last time. Its glow had faded, but the power it represented, the power of memory, courage, and light, would remain with them forever. And in the village, the heart beat steadily, peacefully now, whispering to the wind. We are free. We remember. We endure. The shadows were gone. The village was alive. And so were they, carrying with them the lessons of fear, hope, and the unbreakable courage of the human spirit. The story had ended, but its echoes would linger, a testament to the night they confronted darkness, freed a village, and discovered the strength that resides in the heart of all who dare to face the unknown.